again, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be part of your panel. And before I go on to introduce myself once again and talk about what I see as a vision of the work that I'm doing, I want to acknowledge Teresa Kavanagh. Thank you, Teresa. I truly appreciate your leadership, and I remember one time giving you the name Woman Who Walks with Wisdom. So thank you, Teresa. Thank you. And that you do. And Leigh, thank you as well for those kind words, as both of you as leaders for the city. Truly appreciate the work that you're doing for the communities. So you all know that I'm Claudette Commanda. That is my English name. My original name is Kani Minchkijigunkinu. I cannot translate that in any other language because then it becomes a foreign definition. So I am Kani Minchkijigunkinu. Claudette Commanda is the English name that was given to me by the church and the colonial Canadian government. But the government also gave me another name, 07300799202. As First Nations Anishinaabe people, we are carded, we are numbered under the Indian Act with a number, and that's how they identify us. But my friends, I am Connie Michkishkunkinu, but you can call me Claudette because then you know me. So I guess you asked like if there was one word to describe like the work that I do, if I'm understanding correctly there.
Yeah.
Geez, I think it's about love. It really is about love. No matter the work that we do and how we do it is always asked to be on the foundation of love. And when there's love, then there's inclusion. When there's love, then there's understanding. And when there's love, then there is that community which builds the unity that we need as people, no matter the color we are, no matter the title we hold, and no matter what we do is so important. Love. English.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So you all know I'm Jodi Green. I work at the Jewish Federation of Ottawa. I'm a social worker by training, and I like to call myself a professional Jew. I've worked in community for more than 20 years, and I've always striven to make the Jewish community a welcoming place for everyone from any background. I was going to come up with one word. I've had this a good long time. I think the word that describes my work currently is the most all-encompassing word is collaboration. That's how I like to work. I always try to have a partner community in my interfaith work. We don't succeed by going it alone. We succeed by working together. Building bridges of understanding is the best way to gain deeper knowledge and to get to a person's true heart and to understand that we live in a beautifully diverse city that has so many cultural, national, religious groups and identities, and that by collaborating, by working, by touching each other's hearts, you reduce hate for all.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie-Noëlle Lanthier, and I'm Director of Leadership Connect Prescott Russell. For those of you who may not know where Prescott Russell is, well, it is the area east of Ottawa, all the way to the Quebec border. It has 8 municipalities with about 100,000 people. I was born and raised in the region, spent most of my career in Cornwall, and came back to the area about 20 years ago. And since I came back, and I'm really glad to see some counselors here this morning, female counselors, because I did too. I ran for office and served for 2 terms. And this is when I realized, when I looked to other councils in the area and going to conferences, how much women were missing from the picture. And so today, with the organization that I represent, one of the things that we do is to recruit women to run for office. And as you all know, there is a municipal election coming up in October this year. So we've been really busy getting women to run. So our objective is to have 50 women across 8 municipalities that will run, and hopefully this will bring us closer to parity in politics. So very glad to be here today, and very glad to meet you, and I'll be available for questions after. Thank you.
It's also very obvious that you care so much about this event and what we're doing, and I want to recognize you for that, particularly because you are apologizing. You have no reason to apologize for being you. And you have your notes because you want to say something very important, as do all of us. And I'm not going to apologize for looking at my notes. Okay? And that's important because I do observe as women, we are often so concerned with getting it right that we lose ourselves at what we're trying to do. And that's for all the reasons, as needing to be perfect, or thinking we need to be perfect, or having less grace in what we do. And I think that that's really important for us to be keeping top of mind. And if I was to describe what I strive to do in leadership, it's lift as we climb and extend grace to ourselves first. And I know that's not easy, as well as extending grace to others. So you can see on the screen, my name is Suzanne Obiorah. Born and raised in Ottawa. I worked in health and social services for 25 years. I am the very proud CEO of Somerset West Community Health Centre. Somerset West Community Health Centre serves a diversity of communities that experience all sorts of marginalization due to their identity. And I couldn't be more proud to lead an organization that's focused on supporting communities to experience their best health and well-being. I'm very happy to be here with all of you this morning.
Thank you, Suzanne. My name is Amira Elghawaby. I am a product of the city. Ottawa has been my home since I was a baby. My parents immigrated to Canada from Egypt in the late 1970s. And everything I am today is because of all the incredible people who helped shape me to be who I am today. And many of them are from right here in Ottawa. So everything that I'm proud of standing up for is what people taught me in this city. So I'm immensely grateful for everyone that I've met throughout my journey. I worked as a journalist for many years at CBC Radio after graduating Russell School at Carleton. I went into advocacy later on. I did a lot of work defending the civil liberties of Canadian Muslims, particularly in the aftermath of post 9/11 and uponwards, and sadly, none of that midway. A few days we're going to mark the commemoration of the killing of the family in London, Ontario, in 2021, who were deliberately targeted for being Muslim. We just saw what happened in San Diego, and we know that hate, whether it's Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-racism, Indigenous, the Asian list sadly is very long, that all of them are part of the same type of hatred and division that attempts to divide us. And so if there's one word for my leadership, it's solidarity. We have to stand together. We have to work together. And I think it's in rooms like this, on panels like this, that my hope is reviewed over and over again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amira. So please keep the microphone. I have one. And so the first question then will go to you. And obviously then it will be Suzanne's turn and so on and so forth. So after your introduction, the question would be, how does your identity shape the way you lead? What unique strength it brings to the community you represent?
So all of the questions that have been prepared today, Ines and the panel, are very thoughtful, and I had to spend some time thinking about it. So in terms of thinking about my identity, the truth of it is, going back to growing up in the city, I never thought much about my identity, actually. And I think that's because I had a lot of privilege growing up, in the sense that, going to elementary school, the East End, Orleans Wood Elementary School, not sure if anyone is from Orleans, but that's where I went. And I remember I had a school principal, and I tell this story a lot. So Ron Coleman, if he's out there somewhere, I hope he knows how much he has meant to me in my NRH journey. But he had come up to me in fourth grade, around 10 years old, and had asked me to share a story with the school about being Muslim with my other peers, the 5 Muslim students in a school of 150. And in that moment, I felt that being different or having diverse identity was something to share with others. It wasn't something to hide. It wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something that may be special or in a different way to share with others. And I really carried that right throughout, my youth. And I'm really grateful for that. I hadn't learned about Indigenous communities. I hadn't learned about reconciliation. We didn't know about anti-Black racism. I truly had rose-colored glasses on, and I know that, and I would eventually have to unlearn a lot of the learning. But on the other hand, I had drank the multiculturalism's Kool-Aid, as I often say, and that allowed me to kind of move in the world in a way that was just full of confidence. Like, once I decided to wear the hijab in university, it was my dad who was the only one who tried to discourage me from doing it. He was the only one who said, "You're going to face discrimination. I don't think you should do this." And it was before 9/11, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, "Dad, if I can't wear the hijab, I'd be proud of who I am in this country. I can't do it anywhere in the world." And sure enough, up until 9/11, it was very positive. And then 9/11 happened, and our entire communities faced terrible, terrible discrimination, hatred, and Islamophobia. That being said, I never let go of that feeling I had growing up. And that's why what we give to our kids matters so much. And that's what has become my identity, in the sense of I am adamant that our kids and grandkids have the right to be proud of who they are and all their identities. And so that is what has given me strength to continue to sort of sit up on stages like this. And even though there's so much depth to who I am not just a headscarf. I'm not just, this woman in front of you. I have a lot of interests and a lot of cares, just as all of it here brings so much to who you are. But I will always be proud of what I appear to represent, because of the ways in which there are those who try to diminish what I represent, or diminish my presence, or erase my ability to participate. And so I have that adamant in me, and adamant that I will not allow, because it's not only do I have a right to be at a table or on a panel with these wonderful women, but all of us have a right to be in these spaces and participate.
Thank you, Amira. Then the question goes to Suzanne.
Yeah, I wondered about whether, for me, this question is about my character or what fuels me to show up in the way that I do, and that starts with my family. I was born and raised here in Ottawa. My parents immigrated from Nigeria, cut in the late 70s, and settlement was extremely challenging for my family. My parents had 4 children under the age of 4 while going through university, and were confronted with all of the systemic barriers and realities that many immigrant communities face. That includes racism, that includes financial insecurity, that includes housing insecurity. And while growing up, I don't believe ever that we were victims. I certainly understood from the conversations around the table that there were many challenges that our family were experiencing. Fast forward a little bit, our family was then confronted with severe and persistent mental illness and needing to navigate the healthcare system, as well as extensions of many other systems that are disproportionately impacting Black communities when mental health challenges surface. And what I remember witnessing and what has absolutely shaped me and how I show up in the world today was a fight. I witnessed my mother, who was relentless in fighting to keep her family intact, in fighting to achieve home ownership, in sharing her hopes and aspirations loudly and achieving them against all odds. What I witnessed is, notwithstanding the struggle, we can achieve. What I learned as I got older is that my family's stories was not unique, that Black communities are disproportionately impacted, experiencing inequities in health, in financial security, in housing security, despite education, despite ability, despite knowledge, despite competence, and so on, and so on. And so I have often found myself really challenging who is around the tables that I have the privilege of attending, and also really challenging how decisions are made around what services, what policies, what experiences individuals face in our systems. And that was very much grounded in my lived experiences. I hadn't really understood why I show up and fight the way I do, but it's really being asked these questions that it's been quite a privilege to take a step back and reflect on not only that experience, but the responsibility and opportunity to use that experience in informing and showing up in the various spaces that I have the opportunity to show up.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Once you're at your family and your community of origin, everything seems to be fine in that comfortable bubble. It was for me. I was in a rural community, which is, and even at the time was majority Francophone. So, I didn't see myself as part of a minority until I moved along and came to Ottawa, studied at the University of Ottawa, and I was the first one in my family, and even the first one in the extended family on my dad's side, the only one who went to post-secondary school. I saw some of the issues relating to women. As much when I was younger, in my 30s, I was busy, building my career and working and having a social life. But once you, as you age also, you notice things more. And I didn't have really a lot of models in my life for women who spoke French like me or looked like me, to look up to mentor me. And I could see a lot of inequalities as it relates to women. Not as many women making good money. Not as many women in politics or in a powerful role. And I think in time, this is what led me to want to change things and brought to open doors to women. as many as I could and as fast as I could climb, because we spoke about this, somebody mentioned, to open the door and leave it open for others to come in. And I think that this really became, for me, a mission, because there's too many inequalities, whether we're talking about salaries, whether we're talking about violence against women, whether we're talking politics, whether we're talking about women's health. There are systemic barriers that need to be brought down. And the way to get to those is by having influence and having the right numbers. And I think that if we have more women in influential places and at decision-making tables, we can change this for the young girls that are coming up. And I believe that it can be done. When I look at the hockey league, we never thought we would see this, have women playing hockey and having crowds that are filling arenas. So I think that it takes a long time, and solidarity becomes really, really important, because the more of us there is, the more we can change things, and we can change them more quickly. So this to me is where I see my leadership, and it has to be really a mission that you own and you hold, and trying to be the best that you can be for the young girls in our community, and for the next generations.
So I'm going to start at the end and work backwards at the beginning. My identity is deeply rooted in being a Jewish woman. Deeply, deeply rooted. So I'll tell you my big dark secret. I'm not originally from Canada. I apologize. I know we shouldn't apologize, but when I tell you where I'm from, I might want me to apologize, so I'm just going to put it out there. I grew up about 50 kilometers outside New York City. Sorry, I'm an American. I'm Canadian now, though. Canadian now. Coming up about 3 years since I became a Canadian citizen. So I grew up about 50 kilometers outside New York City in an area that is a high concentration of Jewish people, largely secular, but a high concentration. And everything about my world was impacted by living in that area. The public school I went to, large Jewish community. The stores we shopped at, you'd always run into friends. It was just a part of every day. But I also grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust. And so every day, it was also drilled into us that Jewish hate could kill, and that our safety was never assured. In spite of living in a high concentration area, you should never take that safety for granted. And I've carried that with me throughout my life, and it has deeply impacted the work that I do now. Because if the hate can kill me, it can also kill it with any other community. And that as a Jewish person, I have an obligation through our value system. We have a strong Jewish value setting, justice. Through our value system, I have an obligation and a commitment, not just to my own people, but to the safety and security of all people who find themselves in a precarious situation. And it's not the idea, but it's something that deeply informs the work. Why we do it? Because it's the Zadis. And it's because of knowing that if my community can be damaged, anybody can be a victim, and that I have an obligation to stand up for all those people, for everyone who needs a hand. I want to lift them. I want to support them. I want to work with them. I want to see that we together can go from a place where we feel oppressed to a place where we feel strong, and to a place where we understand that by working together, we better each other, and we better Ottawa, and we better Canada. Thank you.
So the question is about identity, right? Wow. Knows what language. Okay. Well, I only have a few minutes because otherwise it would take would take about 2 hours to really hear my answer about identity. Well, my identity, you all know that I'm Algonquin First Nation, born and raised in my community of Kitagan, Zibi, and Anishinaabe. And, first up, I want to echo the realities shared by Suzanne, because I can relate to those realities as a First Nation person. And I also want to acknowledge Jodi, when you spoke about safety, because and we know this as First Nation women, right? We know that safety is a number 1 issue right now because of, look what's happening right here in this so prosperous country called Canada, the peace and loving country, where you're still killing our women. You're still stealing our women, murdered and missing Indigenous women. It's a reality. We live in this reality. And I never, ever, ever, ever thought that there would come a day that I'd have to be worried about my safety as a First Nation woman, or the safety of my daughter, or the safety of my granddaughter. And that's sad, because this is what we have to live with every day to make sure that our daughters, our granddaughters are going to be safe when they walk in broad daylight, because they are targeted. When they know you're First Nation, Indigenous, they target you. That's very emotional, deeply emotional. This country here, I'm sharing with you live realities as a First Nation woman, because this has now become my identity. I know who I am as a Anishinaabe woman, as an Algonquin woman. I have my culture, I have my language, I have my spirituality. But it's a new identity that I have to carry, and that's that identity of all those traumas of realities that have been placed upon our peoples. The taking away of our lands, the taking away of our languages, the taking away of our children, the taking away of our women, and all this colonial patriarchal actions and behaviors and laws that have been imposed on us. And now we are a minority, and we continue to be a minority. We're still a minority. I'm a minority here in my own land, here in Ottawa, Algonquin land. I'm a minority. We were never a minority. And we welcomed everyone and anyone into our homelands. And we still are welcoming everyone and anyone into our own lands. I don't like that feeling being a minority. And as a matter of fact, there are times that I walk here in my homeland and I feel like a stranger, a total stranger. Total stranger. And that's not a nice feeling. Not a nice feeling to have at all. That's my identity now. Yes, I'm well educated. I'm a lawyer, I'm a professor, I'm a chief executive officer. I have many titles, I have many responsibilities, but I'm still a minority. I'm still an Indigenous woman that's going to worry each and every moment of my life, of my safety, of my daughter's safety, of my granddaughter's safety. But I'm also worried about my sons, and I'm worried about my grandsons and then my great-grandson, because they're targeted too because of racism. These are lived realities. Sadly, this is the identity that we carry. It's a very emotional week this week, very emotional for me. I just came out of a 3-day intense meeting with residential school survivors. And if any of you don't know about residential school survivors, please learn it, because this is what Canada has done to our children. And residential school survivors are still here today. There's a 60 schools taken of our children, taking them away from their families. It's still happening, my friends. Indian day schools. I'm not a residential school survivor. I'm an intergenerational survivor. I am a federal Indian day school survivor, and as a matter of fact, I took Canada, one of the 6 lead plaintiffs that took Canada to court for the abuse. And I'm proud of what we did for our people. But I'm a survivor, yes. But why do we have to have all these darn labels? Why? Right? Why? Why do we have to have the label of minority? Why do we have to have the label of survivor? And by the way, I'm not an angry Indian. Because the moment we speak about our realities, you know what people say? They'll give me a new identity. I'm an angry, hostile Indian. Well, you know what? I'll be an angry, hostile Indian. Because if that's what it takes for people to hear our realities, to understand our traumas, then that's what it has to be. I'm not violent. And many of you know me, that I'm always on the foundation of peace and love. But I do believe in education. I do believe in truth. And if Canada is going to be true to its mission on reconciliation, it has to be on the foundation of truth. Know our history. Know your history. Know the history of Canada, how Canada became a country. If it was not for our people and for the treaties, you would not be here, none of you. Thanks, Riano. Thank you. Anyhow, I just want to conclude to this that I thank you for your emotional. Why I have to talk about it too. May 27th was the 5th anniversary of the 215. How many of you know about the 215? Not very many. On May 27, 2021, that's when 215 unmarked graves were found of children in that residential schools at Kamloops. And now today they're telling us it's a big lie, it's a big hoax. In the same way when they say Jewish to Jewish people that the Holocaust didn't exist. It did. It happened. 250 and many other unmarked graves, it did happen. The stealing of our children and the killing of our children in those schools, and we are still looking for our children. So don't buy into denying. Don't buy into that. Because that's another identity that's been put on that I carry, that I'm a fraudster, because I'm talking about residential schools and unmarked and missing children. Unmarked graves and missing children. Pretty damn sad, I'll tell you that. But you know what? Let's make a new identity today, and let's make that identity called unity on the foundation of truth. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So the time is running, and I may just squeeze the second and the third question together. And I would like you to be maybe a little bit more concise with this one so that we have time to go more about the next question. So can you share one moment, the one of your choice obviously, where you had to navigate barriers and how this transformed the way you lead or support others? So one concrete example and what you took away from it. So maybe, Claudette, we will start with you since you have the microphone.
I hate to ask you, but repeat the question. Did you want to know one moment in what?
So one moment where you had to navigate the barrier, I'm sorry.
Barriers.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that French accent. and then, yeah, how did that transform you?
Oh my God. I have many moments in time as such. Oh, I can't really, well, it relates, in my case here, is all those barriers, you know, about having to justify who you are as a First Nations person, having to justify who you are, the people of the land, having to justify, you know, why we have rights. That's pretty damn sad, I'll tell you that. You know, to justify that, you know, we are the First Peoples. And the most recent example I will give you is that in languages. As you know, that Canada has just recently passed the Indigenous Languages Act, and that's to recognize our languages, right? And it took many years, took decades for our people to raise the awareness that the colonial Canadian governments, through the churches and education, took our languages and we were not allowed to speak our languages. And then, therefore, it was a massive decline of our languages. And by the way, our languages, First Nation languages, are in a critical state even to this day, and many of our languages are dying. So when we lose our language, we have nowhere else in the world to go to learn our language. We don't. Whereas any other person that comes to live here in this country called Canada, you can return home to your mother country to learn your language. But where do we go? Where would I go in the world to find the Algonquin language nowhere but here in North America, Turtle Island. That is a fundamental, powerful indication that we were created here, number one. This is our own land. Languages. So I constantly have to remind people that our languages are the first and original languages of this country. They originate from the land. And so even though people will say, well, no, English and French are the official languages, true, they are. I speak English, je parle français aussi, mais je n'ai pas de choix, je parle français parce que these languages of English and French were imposed on us. I don't have a problem with it. Everyone and anyone, be proud of your language because that's your gift. That's number one. But how do I overcome that barrier is to speak the truth that our languages, First Nation languages, are the first languages and the original languages of Canada. That's number one. And overcoming this barrier is continue to educate, raise awareness that First Nation languages are the first languages and the only original languages of Canada, and to advocate that the Government of Canada and society, Canadian society, has to support our people as allies so our children will have the right to their language today and tomorrow, including the 7 generations that will come. It'll be a sad day when there's no more original First Nation languages in this country called Canada. How will I overcome the barrier? Reaching out there and finding allies to work with us, to walk with us, and to help us through this most critical, important element that we need in order to be who we are. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you.
So I was hired in April of 2023, and I started, let's meet with some people, let's talk. I can very smiley and forgetful. I smile too much sometimes. And then October 2023 happened. And the Canada that I had begged or promised by my husband's family used for here changed. And the barriers and the oppression and the anti-Semitism kind of went. And in February of 2024, my then 12-year-old was climbing into bed, and he goes to pull his shade down to darken his room, and I hear, "Honey, Mommy!" And I come running upstairs, and he says, "Mommy, what is that?" He knew what it was. Someone had drawn a swastika in the snow in front of our house. So we comforted him, and we spoke to him, and we called the police. There's no camera at the Northern area, residential, there was no way to figure out what had happened, who had done it. So after we took the photographs and submitted it, we, smeared it away, of course, not to leave it. But at that moment, things got real for me. My home had been personally violated, and my 12-year-old was the first witness of that violation. He's youngest of my kids. And so moving forward, my goal is to reduce those barriers. I don't know how, just to put it more plainly, that when there are people going around who are drawing symbols in the snow in front of people's houses, when they're throwing rocks through the windows of clergy people, when they're bombing mosques, when they're attacking people for being who they are, we have problems that we need to fix.
Thank you, Jude.
Well, when it comes to barriers, there's one situation, because it becomes sometimes a barrier for me and for many women. I don't know if you all heard about Sarah Good in Cornwall. She's both councillor for the City of Cornwall, and she decided to run for the mayor's position in the current election. And I speak with Sarah, as I do with some of the locally elected women in the area. And I spoke to her a few weeks back, and she called me because she wasn't sure anymore about, she had made the announcement that she was running for mayor. But she just wanted to chat about what was happening to her. And what was happening to her was hate online and attacks. And she was not only shook up by this, because she's a solid individual and can take, some abuse, although she shouldn't, but she could take it as a politician, but this was beyond the pale. So much so that it was affecting her mental health. And she had called her good friend, Senator Bernadette Clément, to talk about this. And Bernadette, also being one who doesn't easily back down, so, you should never back down unless it is affecting your health. And this is what was going on. So in the end, she withdrew, not only her candidacy as mayor, but wasn't going to run as councillor either. So she pulled away from politics altogether. And I was just heartbroken about this, and because I know she's competent, she is passionate, she did great work. She was first elected in the last election too. She was in her first term as elected councillor, and during the election, she got more votes than any other candidate. So she was really on top of her game. And for someone like this, for a young woman like her, and we need young women in politics, for her to have to make that decision, and it was very courageous, for one thing, to make that decision, as courageous as it was to enter politics. But, this hate online, this toxic masculinity that is rising in all different sectors. And this is, it is not only dangerous, but this is how we are being pushed away from decision-making tables, from power. And this, to me, is a great fight that we'll have to fight in solidarity, but also fight it with love, and also being conscious when we are online what we write and how we respond to people who are launching those attacks, share disinformation, share lies, made up stories. So to me, this is probably the biggest barrier, because it will affect negatively women more than most. And this is the fight that I've prepared to fight for.
Thank you. So Suzanne and Amira, we're running on time. So I would like to ask you, if it's possible, just make it a bit shorter so I have at least time for one more question.
I know he wants to be brief, but the questions are just so deep. So deep. I'm so sorry. We can't cover light. We can't be concise. I'm going to try. I have to keep praising my mom. She was gone for a long time, and she's just come back. So she's obviously top of mind for me. I watched her submit over 40 applications for job advancement in her career, and denied all those times, made it into one section, but then didn't fit, and so wasn't able to move forward. So I would often hear her say, I want you to get your master's and you need to speak French. That is how you're going to be able to push through in your career. So she made us all learn French, and lo and behold, of course, I got my master's. I have an MBA with a specialization in healthcare management. And so here with these tools of feeling prepared, I've learned the language of corporate. I understand how to do a PowerPoint presentation. I'm ready. And very quickly humbled as I'm navigating my career to understand that there's a whole other book that wasn't in any of my MBA classes that were the unwritten rules of the workplace. And that's where the barriers surface. Not only physically in aiming to navigate the systems, but then they play a toll on you mentally. And what's wrong with what I do? How come I don't get it? How did so-and-so, why, how are they able to be successful? And I wasn't. Only to then understand how my physical identity absolutely plays a role in in my success in the workplace. And so resilience naturally is developed as you work through rejection, as you work through defeat, as you work through disappointment, and are able to come through it on the other side and succeed. And that succession or that success, it feels really good, though at the cost of an emotional tax. And so, when I think back on, what kept me going or what keeps many going, one example is how critical it is for us to be there for each other. It can feel so isolating to navigate that exclusion. But we have the power amongst each other to push through that challenge. And I don't want to dismiss our power in supporting each other through the challenge or through those journeys. I'll bring it back to my guiding principle of lifting as we climb, because it's often easier to just stop. When I worked at Somerset West Community Health Centre as their director of primary care, it was the executive director at the time that kept pushing me to continue to apply for funding to support programming for Black communities in the context of mental health. Notwithstanding numerous proposals that were rejected, she understood how critical it was for us to have culturally responsive programming and really wanted me to keep going. Without that support, of course, I would say no. And we came out on the other side. Shout out to United Way, who was the first organization that provided Somerset West with funding, and that trickled and trickled and trickled over to then form the Ottawa Black Mental Health Coalition. And it's hard to see the accomplishment through the rejection, but it's possible that we are there with each other, and we are supporting each other through it. I've seen, I have to keep it brief, so I'll pass it on.
It's all fine. I'm going to compress the last question to one very short one.
So there's just been so much shared already, and I just want to take a moment to just sit with some of what we've heard so far. Claudette, I have often heard Claudette in gatherings like this. I think today I've seen a side of you that I have not had the privilege of seeing before, in the sense that I think that there is safety and even the space together, and I'm so grateful to have a chance to carry with you what you shared about how you feel as an Indigenous woman and Algonquin woman. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that. Jodi, I'm so sorry that your son looked out the window and saw that swastika. I think that for all of us, like we think it, and our kids, and wanting to protect them from the world, I think it really breaks our heart that we come to your home in that way. It's really frightening, and so I just want to also acknowledge that. And then the online hate that, Marie-Noëlle, that you described, the woman who has now retreated from public life, that's heartbreaking, as you said. And of course, Suzanne, like, all shared in your plight for mental health for Black communities and just what you've had to go through. There's threads of commonality between all of our stories, and I'm sure with many of you, as you're reflecting, you're listening, there's so much that we share. And so just to share some of my barriers have been quite public. When I was appointed to be Canada's first ever Special Representative on Combating Islamophobia 2023, it was based on a recommendation that had come from community after the massacre that I mentioned that we'll be commemorating the 5th year of this Saturday. That going at the Assal family, which came 2 years after a massacre in a Quebec City mosque. The first such massacre took place in Washington on country, hopefully the last. And so to take on that role was a big step, but one that I felt was important. And within a few hours of the appointment, I faced a huge backlash of criticism and of online hate that never really debated for the 3 years that I was in the position. And in particular, I would feel it most strenuously when I was trying to speak about the human rights of people. And oftentimes when many of you may know that, not too far from here, across the bridge in Quebec, there are women and men, religious minorities, who are not able to fully practice their citizenship, practice their human rights in Quebec. If they're a member of any religious minority, whether they're Sikh, they're Jewish, they're Muslim, want to be a teacher, a police officer, now even early childhood educators, they're not allowed to because of Bill 21 and most recently Bill 9 that's been introduced there. And so, the human rights of fellow citizens in this country are being violated. That's why the notwithstanding clause was invoked, and which is now before the Supreme Court of Canada. And so we've been speaking about those realities and believing that everyone in this country deserves the same human rights. Indigenous communities were banned from their religious ceremony for many, many years. So, as it often is said, you don't know your history, you're bound to repeat it. And our Indigenous brothers and sisters, Inuit Métis First Nations, they taught us so much, actually, about inclusion, about belonging. This is not something that came with colonization. This was something that was here. This was where we were taught that when you're in part of a circle and people are joining your circle, we learn from First Nations teachings, you can expand that circle. You bring more people in. And so it's really been very difficult for me throughout the 3 years of the position to constantly have to speak out for what seems logical, for people's decency and human rights, and yet constantly face political hate, as well as the online hate, which was at points incessant to the point of receiving death threats, having to report police, and police had separate files open. And so that is the cost. That is the cost for many people, in particular women, for having to sever the public and the vocal in articulating the human rights that everyone should deserve, and in particular when it comes to women in Quebec. A Quebec judge says that this particular bill, 121, has a disproportionate impact on Muslim women who wear hijab. And he described the law as cruel. So this is happening while, many organizations, including women's organizations, have said that this is an attack not just on religious freedoms, but on equality rights and the rights, even though it is being reported that this is in defense of the rights of men. Well, I think women have said it time and time again. I think we have the right to decide what we wear when we get up in the morning. that's the choice. That's the choice that we have to be able to make. So that was a barrier that I faced throughout my tenure, and I guess the way I overcame it was the office was closed. And so now I don't have to deal with the same type of hate, but I can say that the solidarity, going back to my keyword, the solidarity that I received for people across this country, from communities affected, and people who are not even affected in the slightest, but could see that there are principles at stake, and there are principles at stake for what it means to live in a democracy, what it means to live in a place where everyone should be treated with the same equal. Because believe you me, when they come for one of us, they will eventually come for all of us. So we have to stand together.
Thank you, Amira. I would like to repeat the microphone for the last panel question, and then we will move to the Q&A question, but we're not prepared. So my final question will be kind of a mixture of whatever we had as questions, and I would maybe focus a little bit more on a positive message, which would be, what message do you want to share with women growing up in diverse communities and cities?
So I think the number one point is listen. But then, secondly, it's important to act on what we hear from one another. It's not enough just to absorb it and walk away. It's how can I absorb this information? I'm going to absorb it of how you're experiencing a social system, you're experiencing elections, you're experiencing the school system, what have you. And I'm going to understand what is my role in helping alleviate, address the challenges you've described to me. So listening and then acting on that in whatever way that we can.
Thank you, Amira. Wow, this was short and very powerful. Thank you.
I'm very moved by what you've shared, and just want to thank you for sharing that, your realities and your experiences. Many of us probably are seeing this pendulum swinging to the intensification of hate, the intensification of polarization, and it's very challenging to navigate that because there are significant consequences to our person, our mental health, our well-being. I remember following the George Floyd incident. The world experienced what some call a racial reckoning. I had the privilege to work as the Director of Gender and Equity, Indigenous Relations and Social Development at the City of Ottawa, and support and development of the City of Ottawa's first anti-racism strategy, and felt this was one of the most monumental pieces that the City of Ottawa can use to say we have we have commitment here structure to change what we're seeing within our systems. And now we're seeing this backlash around what equity means and who is deserving of what. And there's a test we had now around needing to continue to push through on our commitments amid that backlash, because understandably there's a significant political context that's taking place, not only at the municipal level, at the provincial level, at the federal level. We're seeing a quieting of conversations around equity, and we're seeing more conversations around everyone is deserving. What I am so hopeful for is how informed the generations coming up are with language, with ambition, with competence to challenge the quieting or to challenge that backlash. And so only want to walk alongside and support this generation who knows how best to speak to opposition and doesn't seem to shy away. That this is a moment for us, and we can decide to be quiet for good reason, or we could decide to continue to fight. And I'm simply wanting us to, if we are ready and able to fight, to continue that and support each other, and also support the generation coming ahead in that struggle.
I think I'd say just show up. Show up when something's wrong. Show up for others and for each other. I think that with all this pushback, we have to be aware that we have some power, so we could use that power. And I know that for women, there is always this weight of all the decision and the changement that is affecting women so negatively because of all the domestic responsibilities that are not shared equally or fairly. Women carry a lot of responsibilities, and certainly the goal is not to add to that. But when you are amongst other women, first of all, we tend to be good listeners. I hope we all are. And but there's also support there. There are mentors around you. There are women who will open doors. Sometimes it's just a matter of asking, but you have to be there for the ask. So solidarity is important, and showing up is really important as well.
Thank you.
So as far as what I would tell younger women is, first of all, look at this room and look at this stage. There are resources in this community to help us all grow and develop, because my advice would be to be loud and be proud. Be proud of who you are, stand up for who you are, honor who you are. I'm going to caveat a little bit the word loud though. I can be quite a loud person, but I'm generally not such a loud person. My preferred way of building bridges and making connections is over Fosse. I drink, laugh. And I don't mean that I drink 8 cups a day, but so much of my week and month and year is spent sitting across the table from someone over a cup of something warm and talking and getting to know one another and finding each other's hearts, finding what motivates us and learning. And so I'm able to be loud for my community through quiet, intimate coffee dates. So how do each of you, and how do the young women that you touch, how do they define what loud means for them? And then how do they be proud in what they're doing? So yesterday, the Ottawa Police Service had an anti-hate forum. And I had the privilege to hear from Kirsten Dumont, who's an Anishinaabe knowledge keeper. She was brilliant. And she described the people of Ottawa, all people from all backgrounds, as kin, as family. And she asked us to think about how we would treat a member of our family. Could we look at our sisters, mothers, aunts in the eye and hate them? I was deeply, deeply moved by her words around that concept of seeing each other as kin, as family, as being cut from the same cloth. And then it reminded me of something that I learned as a young girl when I was in the Girl Scouts. We were always told, leave a place better than how you found it. Now, the practical of what we were being told was, clean up after yourself and do it well. But take that one step deeper. And it's, how do we want our city to be? How do we want to lead it? So I'm going to ask you boldly and proudly and loudly to use your voice and use your influence to leave Ottawa better than how you found it.
Thank you, Chippy.
You mentioned coffee. I'm thinking of tea, like tea time. And we know, as we, the Anishinaabe women who are in this room here, that our grandmothers always got together, right? You go to Kokum's house, and all the ladies there, the Kokums, the mothers, especially the grandmothers, they would congregate in one's house, and over tea time, they would talk about life, and they would talk about what was needed and what you had to do. So tea time is so important, right? And I love tea time. You know, so what message can I leave here? Well, to all the women, regardless of what age you are, but in particular for the young women, use your voice, let no one silence you. And my strength came from my grandfathers, both my paternal and my maternal grandfathers. They told me, use your voice, let no one stop you from doing what you want. You are smart, you have something that no other student in that classroom is going to have, because you come from this land, period. And my grandmothers, my mother, very silent strength, and they mentored me as well. At the end of the day, especially one of my grandmothers who was so feisty, I'm not going to say what she said, but I could say it knock on with, but basically what she would say is that don't let no man push you aside, because they're only a man. And in particular, when it came to the church, the priest that used to be after us constantly, she told that priest, leave my granddaughter alone. And then he said to my grandmother, you can't talk to me like that. And she says, why? He said, because I'm a priest. She goes, you're just a man, you're just a human being, and I can talk to you any way I want to talk to you. So use your voice, let no one silence you, and you know what? As women, we're going to make the ya-ya sisterhood. Okay? You're going to share the experience, the realities, and your strengths, because we all have our realities, we have our experiences, and we have our strengths. So let's be the ya-ya sisterhood.